Hi, I'm Chris, an interaction designer on the Android Developer Tools team. This is the fourth episode in our mini-series of building Shrine in Jetpack Compose, with a continued dive into animation. If you missed the last episode, be sure to check the show notes for the link. Alright, so in this episode, we are going to build the expanding cart bottom sheet. You're probably wondering what that is. So if we go back to our Shrine spec, one of the neat things about this is the transitions, and so we covered the backdrop transitions last time, mainly with when you open and close that menu. And so today with the cart bottom sheet, we're going to build another animation, so kind of continuation of the animation work we did last time. So this kind of shows all the animations together, but that sweeping animation there, I'll just let it repeat itself. It's that expanding, so it expands from the bottom left to the top right, and that's what we're going to build today. This is the very specific design spec of it. So here, if we kind of can play it in reverse, like if you imagine the card is on the bottom and the user taps it, so it will expand to the top left, like so. And then what we'll also build is like when the user taps this little arrow button here, it's going to close. And so it's kind of this expand collapse behavior, which is really neat. There's a lot of motion going on. Things going from the left to the right at a different speed. There's fading. There's even this checkout button, which has its own kind of nuance of how it comes in and out. And that's what we're building. But that's the motion spec. And so one thing you notice, though, is that, in the previous episodes, we had built the cart. I think that was the very first episode we actually did. And so that is, I think this would look familiar for those who were following along here. But if you notice in the mockup, there is actually a version of the cart that is what I would call like the collapsed cart. So this is it's the same cart, but it's just presented differently. So this is like the collapsed cart, and then the full cart looks more like this. And so we're actually going to need to build this first, and then we already have the expanded cart, and then it's just a matter of building the transition between the two, which is the most fun part, I believe. So, all right, so we already have that, and so what we do need to do is build a collapse cart. And so I will just start doing that. One thing I should do, though, is I'll rename this to expanded cart. One sec, rename, and expanded cart, just because so Android Studio is asking me a bunch of things about renaming things, just so it's clear later that there's a difference between expanded and collapsed. So I'll just start to build here. That one sec, and then call it collapse cart. And then I'll build a preview function for it, just so we can check our work as we go. Cart preview. All right, and then really, as with every preview I've set up, we use the Shrine Compose theme, and then we will put the collapse cart here. There's nothing in here, and so I'll just throw in some stuff just so we get something on screen. This is the collapsed cart. All right, so hit refresh preview. So we have our Shrine spec. Here it is, and so we're talking about the collapse cart, and so this is what it kind of looks like if we zoom in. And so it's about 56 dp tall. It's got some padding on left and right. It's got this cart icon, this round guy here with some corners with the image. And so that's what we'll build first, and there's actually some elevation. So let's go back to Studio. All right, so we have the collapse cart here at the bottom, which is what we want. I think what I'll also do for now is just comment out some of these previews just to speed things up. You can always uncomment them and bring them back, but just so we can kind of focus on this one. All right, so go back to our design spec. First build that icon. So this one is, let's see, image vector. It's icons.default.shopping cart, I think. Yeah, and then content description equals null. Then the other one we have is this image here, and so I think for now what I will do is just put a different image in here, r.drawable. We have a bunch of images, so I'll just put a placeholder one like this photo. And oh, what isn't it like? Oh, content description, of course. Image. And this one for completeness, we'll say the shopping cart icon. All right, and then kind of the space between. It's about 24, but I'll do that. So horizontal arrangement equals arrangement. Let's do this incorrectly. All right. I'll hit refresh. And I've already completed this project before, but we're kind of just redoing it and kind of going through the motions of how I did it before. And so I'll have that open next to it. Oh, yeah, here we go. Just so, for the sake of time, we can always kind of speed things up. So, oh, yeah, sure. Oh, what? Why is it asking me all these questions? Okay, that was weird. All right, so cart bottom sheet, collapsed cart. Yep. Okay. Gotcha. All right. So here we have the collapsed cart. It's auto sized to the image, and so the height is sized to the image. So the height of the image is about, where is it? It is about 40 by 40. So we're actually going to crop it. So we can use a modifier for that. Modifier.size, and it's really 40 dp. And for the image, it's a painter, right? So for the image, we want to clip it nicely, and so there's a parameter for clipping. Can't remember what it is though. It is image. Content scale, right? Yeah. Scale equals content scale dot crop. Okay. And so what this does is basically just tries to put the image in the center and then just crops around it versus trying to scale it to the 40 dp. That won't look very nice since these images are pretty small, or they're pretty big compared to how small this thing is. All right. Yep, there we go. And so we also want a surface behind it. Let's see. What else we got? Got 8 by 16 padding, so I'm going to add padding to the row. Padding horizontal equals 16 dp, vertical is 8, I think. Did I get that right? Yep. And then for the icon, so this icon's a little big and we want to kind of center it in a box, and so that's pretty easy to do. Just put it in a box, and then we'll make the box the same size as the image, just so they all kind of like look nice and uniform. And then what I'll also do is place the icon in the center of the box. All right, refresh that. While that is going on, let me jump back to my finished code. Oh yeah, I'm kind of doing it correctly. So each of these collapsed cart items, yeah, you could refactor it into your own method, like this, which, I think I'll do. I'll just copy this anyway because, so we had it already here, but there's other aspects to it. And so, what you can always do in the IDs, you can say you can refactor this into its own function. Android Studio is smart that it knows it's a composable function, and so it will actually put the annotation there instead of your regular Kotlin functions. And so I can just call this collapsed cart item. And so now it's something you can actually reuse. And so we're always going to pass it a photo ID, so we should probably add a parameter for that. We can just call it photo ID. It's an int. And then the content description is usually what the image is, and so we'll just say like description. It's a string. And then all we have to do is just replace it here. And then we'll replace this description. And then I think when I did copy paste that code, we wanted the corners to be a little round. So we can actually clip it like that. And so we can say, we can clip the drawing and use a rounded corner shape with 10 dp of rounded corners. The 10 dp, probably wondering where I got that from. In Figma, yeah, you can see the rounded corners are about 10, so that's where I got the value from. The collapsed cart item now expects data to be passed, and so in this case, I can always hard code it and say drawable.photo, and then I can just do this with bag. We will clean that up in a sec, but that just gets this going. And so we want to, I think one thing I'll mention is in this design, the way the collapsed cart works is there's a limit to how many items we show. Like imagine there's 10 items in the cart. We don't want to show all 10 in this little representation because it's just not going to work on a small screen. So there is kind of a maximum. This is kind of, we won't build this whole design like this, but like we want to limit it to 3, plus the icon itself. And so what I can do is make sure that it is limited to 3. And so we'll just hard code that for now. So I will say, we'll do a for loop. Let's see, what is it? For var I equals 0, and then I is less than 3, I plus plus. Oh. Var on loop is not allowed. Oh, is it let? Yeah. Actually, I'm probably doing this wrong. I always forget how to do for loops in Kotlin. Maybe this is just a better way to do it. Yes, we will do that. We are going to limit the cart to 3 items. And so we'll be passing a list of items, and then we can just say, items dot for each item like this. And then every item has a photo, or has a photo res ID, and then it has a description as well. Or what did I call it? Maybe it's called, I don't know. Did I? Title. Yes, that's what it is. And if you, and for those who've just joined the stream, I made these data structures a while ago in the first episode, so we're just reusing this. But if you wanted to revisit it, every item has an ID, title, price, vendor, and that's what we'll be using. And I have a bunch of sample data with sample images. The photos are already in the project, but that's how it's brought in here. And so if we go back, yeah, so this is looking a little better. And we're only going to do this for 3 items. And so that's why here I said, really, it's going to limit it from 0 to 2 as the default. And so if we were to refresh the preview, you should only see 3 items here. Still refreshing. Oh, 2. Oh, I think I said 0 to 2. I can probably do 3. That will 0, 1, 2. Wait, that's confusing. Yes, there we go. All right, so there will be a max of 3. Okay, so let's go back to our design. So this is going to be in the bottom right corner of a screen. So we can kind of fake that here in the preview. So what I will do is I will just create a fake surface. Within the surface, I'll just say there's a box. Move this up, collapse cart. And so, one sec. Actually, we don't need to do that. So the thing is, like, we could build the collapse cart directly as a component that kind of grows and shrinks. But really what I want to do is there is a container that the collapse cart and the expanded cart are going to be in. And the container is the thing that I want to animate to go to the top left. And then when it does grow, then I will just swap between the expanded cart and the collapse cart. And so that container I want to call, I guess I will call it the cart. That is called the cart expanding bottom sheet. It's a mouthful, but we can start to build it here. And so within that, it can be a box. And so I will just refactor this into its own function. I'll call it cart expanding bottom sheet. Yep. And so this, we will always want it to be in the bottom right. And so the way we do that is it has to be within a box, or box within a box. And so the way we do that is we have to pass it a modifier. And so cart expanding bottom sheet, actually I'll call this public because we're going to be using it in other parts of the app. It will have a modifier, and then the default is modifier. This is actually just good practice to do for any composable that you build. It gives you flexibility about, if there's contextual positioning that you want to pass into your component, this is kind of an easy way to do that. So in this case, like the modifier I want to pass it is to tell it to bottom align to the right in the box. And so there's an align parameter like this, alignment.bottom end, which is the right in our case for LTR layouts. And so then, oh, it doesn't need that. I'm so bad at writing Kotlin sometimes. The modifier, let's see. Wait, does this make any sense? I think it does. Yeah. So within here, we're going to build, it's like this color here. And so I'll call it a box for now also. And the box is going to be, it'll be 56 dp right now. So modifier.height 56 dp. It's going to have this cut corner here on the left. That is similar to the shape we had before. And so I can use a background for that. Background. The color of the background will be our secondary color. And then the shape behind it will be actually the large one. Material theme dot shapes dot large. All right. So why did it introduce that? Need to import this. Okay. I wish they would just wrap. There used to be an intention for this. Okay, And then this will be all right. It's a lot of code changes. Went really fast. So, okay. Ooh. Yeah. Yeah, so this is looking better. So now this like kind of emulates a screen. And so at some point we're going to hook this up to the rest of our app that we had before. But this is just to give you a preview of the positioning. So right now it's on the bottom, or it's on the bottom right, which is what we expected. And you do have that nice cut corner. There's no elevation, so I think, I don't know exactly what this elevation is, but we can kind of fake it. And so let's see, we can just add some shadow and then just say 8 dB. Doesn't like that, so can import it. Hit refresh. Okay, so let's just want to check my work and make sure I'm doing this right. You know, one thing is like you build UI over and over again, but sometimes every time you rebuild it, you sometimes approach it in a different way from the last time you did it. Yep. Let's see, cart. The thing I'm looking for. Yeah, okay. Yeah, this is roughly what we want. Okay. Yeah, oh. What? Oh, the shadow. That shadow looks bad. I think because it doesn't have the same shape as before. So if we do that, and then this is elevation. So I think shadow, like, you have to apply shape to shadow as well, because it doesn't always take in consideration when you're adding shape to other things like the background. So I think if I do it correctly, it will fix itself. Zoom in. We'll wait on that. Yeah, there you go. So the shadow is actually cut now to the shape, which is much better. Okay, so we have this, and really we want to transition from this to, I'll bring it back. Where is our expanded cart? Yes, here we go. Rebuild. Let me take a sip. If we go back to the direct spec, so we're going to build, we have the collapse cart now, and really it's going to, the container will expand and then it will fade the collapse cart out, and then the expanded cart will fade in, and this checkout button as well. So if we go back, it's still building. So this is the expanded cart we had before. And I think it might have the button on the bottom, if I remember correctly. Let's see. What is happening? Oh, that broke. Let me fix that. Let's see. Yep. So, this interactive preview, but yes, you can kind of interact with it, but the button is at the bottom. We're gonna have to fix that later because it's gonna animate it in a different layer, but this is just to recap what the full cart used to look like. All right. So how do we animate between the two? We can call upon several APIs. I think the one I would like to use, which I used, I think in the last lesson, or last episode, was animated content. It is experimental, but it hasn't really changed much for a while, and so I've been pretty confident in using it in the app. And this is mainly, about using Compose to do prototyping, not necessarily to build production apps. You can use this if you want to learn to eventually build production apps, but using experimental APIs in my use case is not the biggest deal, and it's really I'm just trying to communicate the design intent. And so animate content is a great API to use for animation for our use case. And so let's see. We're going to animate between the two. So animated content. So then the target state is whether or not this is expanded. So we're going to have to pass a Boolean for that. So expanded is Boolean equals false by default. I will say it's expanded. And then import it. And then it is experimental, like I said, so you just have to mark your functions as such, or annotate your functions as such, just to, because when you are in production, like when you're building your app, you'll get a warning that it's like, hey, you're using experimental APIs. That's okay. It doesn't mean you can't use the app. It's just like, it's a risk you take because the API could change, and it's also a reminder that you should go back and change it once that API has been updated or is no longer experimental. And so in this case, we can say, if the target state is true, which means it's expanded, then I think if I do that, yep. We want to, if it's expanded, we want to show the expanded card. And then if it's not expanded, we will show the collapse card. Did I get that right? I think so. Where is it? Yes, okay. Cool. So how do we, and then I think one thing is like when we click on the way it will transition is like we want to tap on it. So what we can do is we're going to pass the expanded action in. And so we'll create a value here. So expanded by, remember, mutable state, false. And we got to do a bunch of imports. Are we ready to go yet? Okay. All right. And then we're going to expand, or sorry, we're going to pass expanded here. Expanded. But then the thing is, like, we want to pass this modifier down, and so we're going to say, it's clickable, and it's what it means is like when they click on the card expanding bottom sheet, then expanded just toggles between expanded being true or false. So that's what we'll do here. We'll have to import this as well. Okay. And so what happens then is like, because this modifier gets passed down, it knows that when I click it, it's going to toggle expanded to expanded. And when it does that, it updates that state here and always passes it back into the bottom sheet. And this kind of separation is actually nice because then the expanding bottom sheet itself doesn't really have to take responsibility for knowing if it's expanded or not. It just knows if I'm expanded, do something. If not, don't do anything. But the toggling of that should be handled by a higher level component. And in this case, I would put this or refactor this into a screen. Like if we called it, we actually have the main screen in the main activity, which is, yeah. So I would put it somewhere here, but we'll get to that later on in this episode. So let me go back here. I will rebuild the preview so that we can test this interaction here. Okay. So, why does it keep breaking on interactive preview? I don't know. Okay. Now let's see if I click this. Yeah. So it's a little laggy, but you can see when I click it, it goes between the two. And, this is not exactly the design we want, but we're getting there. And so the reason is because, I hard-coded the height to be 56dp, and really we want it to go up into the top. And so this thing is anchored to the bottom right corner. And so I'm going to have to actually have it grow, but we want to keep that anchor because, when it does grow up, it kind of grows up to the left, but always feels like it's anchored to the bottom right. And the transition you see in like the size content, that's kind of by default with animated content because it's basically, the expanded card is like bigger and the collapsed card is smaller. And so it's just trying to fill that space that it's animating in. And so, because we had created this expanding bottom sheet, which is the container, it's expanding in that box. And the box has no size. The box is sized to the content itself. And so naturally, if the content goes from a small thing to a big thing, the container just gets bigger. But I did hard code the height, and so that's why the width is changing, but not the height. And so we can fix that. And so before I do that, let me think. I think the way I approached it before was I used... So there's some animation tweaks we can certainly do. But let's see. Expanded. And so cart transition, checkout button, right. Yes. Okay. So there's a lot of little things we are going to do. So there is a construct called box with constraints. It's useful in this case because what we are going to need to do is we need to know the height of this screen. And so, 56dp is hard-coded, but this is kind of roughly the size of a Pixel 4 in terms of height and width. But depending on how big the phone display ends up being, you just don't know. And so there, at runtime, it's like, how do you know how big the screen is at any given point? There are some APIs to use that kind of let you query the device to figure out how big it is. But one construct that I will use here, which I find useful for this specifically, is this concept called box with constraints. And so it's similar to box, except what it does is you're allowed to actually query what the height and width are. So here I can say, I think it's size. I can't remember what it's called. It is constraints. Let me go back. It's referred to as, I used it here. Yes. Yes, max height and max width. That is what it is called. And actually, I don't need a surface anymore. I can just put this within a box with constraints. Oh, whoops, that was a typo. With constraints. Okay. We'll remove that. Okay. And do this. Okay. So I'm going to pass... I need to know this because I need to know what is the maximum height that the expanded bottom sheet should grow to, and also what's the maximum width, because that's not always clear here. And so let's see. I'm going to create new parameters, and I'll call it max height. And then, like I said, box with constraints, like within the box with constraints scope, there is a max height variable, which I am passing in here. And then max width, it's the same thing. There's probably going to be people on this stream that will tell me I shouldn't do this, or there's better ways to do this, but you probably are right, but this is what worked for me. And if this were a production app, or if it was an app where I really cared about performance, then I would likely revisit this. But for this example, I think this is perfectly fine. Okay. So here, for max height, really we want the height to either be 56 dp or the max height. So I can pass it here. And we're going to need a way to go between the two heights and animate it. And so what we can do is, rather than just using the max height directly, I'll go back to using fixP. Let me start to create a transition. So I will call it val cart expand transition. Actually, you know, I'm not gonna type this out. I've already done this. Here we go. I'll take all of this here. Okay. Okay. So, it's complaining about all the red things. So there's going to be a cart transition, and I'm going to need some state objects here. Where did it go? State. Cart. Oh, here we go. Yeah. I'll put this here. So these enumerations are just useful for us because it's a way to kind of like more clearly understand the different states that are coming in. And so, you know, there's three states that the cart's actually the expanding bottom sheet is going to be in. There's expanded, which I said. There's the collapsed. There's also a hidden state, which we'll talk about later. But it's just as useful. Come on. We'll import this. Let's see. Why is the IDE misbehaving? I think it's having a real problem with importing this stuff. It's like way behind. Okay. So when hidden, oh, I'll hide that for now. All right. We'll close this for now. We need items. Oh, interesting. Okay. So the other thing too is I wrote this code. So, you know, we have items for both the expanded cart and the collapsed cart. And so really we should be passing all the items into the bottom sheet because the bottom sheet is going to take all that data. And so I will say, what are the list of items? The default is the sample items. Comma. Thank you. And so when we pass that to the collapse cart, really we're going to make it a sub list. Sorry. And I think I had that before. Really, it's just the first. Sorry. The first three. And then the expanded cart is just passing the full list. And I think that's parameter. Yep. Yeah. So we're passing the full list into the expanded cart. Okay. Kotlin. Oh. And then, okay. All right. Cool. So, a lot of code copy pasted in here. So what are we doing? So, like I said, we're going to have a transition. It's going to go between the expanded state and the collapsed state. And so we're going to animate different things as we go into this transition. So one is the height. And so I mentioned the cart height and the spec. So really it's like if the cart is expanded, we want to go to the max height. If it's collapsed, we want to go to 5060p. And so this is going to animate between those two values. And then this is the transition spec for that. I'll just hook this up to the height first. So that at least covers the height. And for the height, this is kind of based on that motion spec. So when it's going from expanded to collapsed, it will be 283 milliseconds with the default of a fast out linear easing. And then it's the opposite when it's going from collapsed to expanded. It's going to be 500, so it's going to be a little slower. And here, where did I get that value? So you can kind of see, can't remember which exact one it is. It is, well, I guess this is the close transition. And so, yeah, the total duration of the height changing is 500 milliseconds. And so that's kind of what I went with here. But a lot of other things kind of happen while that's occurring. And it's the opposite with the expanding. Well, it's much faster. So that's the cart height. The other thing is interesting is the corner size does animate. So if I play this back, you'll notice, actually, if I go to kind of like midway here. So the corner there's no cut corner. You can kind of see in the bottom sheet. But the cut corner does show up here. And so if you go really slow, you can see the corner kind of goes from a cut corner to a non-cut corner. So we can do that with animation too. So with corner size, I've already hooked up the exact tweening for it. And I'm really going to go between 0 and 24. And so prior to that, remember I passed this material shape as large. But actually what we can do is, rather than passing that, we can just use cut corner shape. And then give it the corner. So it's the top left corner. So top start. And then I'll just say, this is corner size. And then I'll copy paste that to the shadow just so it looks nice. So let's see, I think expanded. So right now there's two transitions happening. There's the height of it and the corner size is one transition, and then the animated content is a different transition. But the cool thing is we can actually hook up the two. But before we do that, let me just verify that both transitions are actually working. Okay. All right. We want to check that the collapse cart animation was working. And so here, oh yeah, there's a little bit of lag, but you can, oh right, I totally messed this up. Yeah. So if you click this, it expands up, and if you click it, it expands down. So we're getting there. It's not quite there, but it works. And so we want to kind of modify this a little bit. One thing we can do is, here we go. We can use the animation inspector to really figure out how this animation is going. So here we can see if we, yeah, so you can see it's like moving up. Actually, one thing I'll do, and this is kind of a neat trick, is we can combine. So animated content is not supported by the animation inspector right now, which is why you don't see it in there. But there is a trick you can do to hook it up. So you can actually do this. You can say cart transition animated content like so. And I did this before, and I'm just going to make sure it works this time. Yep. And so now the target state, you don't pass the target state because the target state from before is now passed. And so target state really is that consistent cart bottom sheet. And so we can say if target state equals cart bottom sheet dot expanded, then we do show the expanded cart. And it's complaining. Oh yeah, it's just unnecessary. So we're gonna add the nice transition later, but now, and cross my fingers that this works because it did work last time. Yeah. Oh, had to charge my battery also. So Cool. All right, so let's peek. Oh, wasn't done. Yeah, so if I go down here, yeah, and so it looks like animated content is in here. If I scroll, yes, there we go. This is great. So let me move it down just a little bit so you can see. And so now we actually both have the two transitions are now connected as one transition. And so one is animating certain parts, and then the other is actually calling the animated content. But it's nice because they're all synchronized. So here, we have it growing to the left, and then it's going up to the top right. And we have that nice kind of hockey stick effect where it's like whoop, so it goes up and to the left. The timing, though, is not, it's a little off from the design spec that I had. So I've already written this code or the exact tweenings before, so I'll just add that here just because it's easier to just talk through. Oh. All right. Okay, cool. Now, I'll collapse that. So I'll just talk a little bit through the animation code. Also rebuild the preview. What's happening here is we can be very specific about the tweens and the fades for animated content, which is really cool. So what I'm saying here is like when it goes from expanded to collapsed, we want the we want the collapse card to fade in with this tween and linear easing, and then we want the expanded card to fade out. And then it's a different animation when we go from the collapsed state to the expanded state. So when we go from collapsed to expanded, the incoming one, which is the expanded card will fade in, and then the other one will fade out. And so the fade in, fade out, it seems like it's the same effect, but the numbers are actually slightly different based on the design spec that I had to refresh your memory here. And so all of these different speeds were obtained from this design spec. So your designer may be very specific about whether the enter transition is different from the exit transition, and depending on what state. They don't have to get into that detail, of course, or that nuance, but this system in Compose allows for that, which I think is great because you can get, very beautiful animations that are highly crafted. You don't have to necessarily settle for really simple stuff. But as a reminder, so animated content, we pass our own transition spec, but by default, it has some pretty decent transitions already kind of if you don't specify anything. So the default is really the thing that's incoming will fade and scale, which is kind of a neat effect, and then the outgoing one will fade out. So if you don't touch it, it actually looks pretty good, but we have an exact design spec, so we're going to use it. Yep. So if I repeat this and then I slow it down, yeah, that's looking good. So yeah, you can kind of see it kind of shoots up like so. And because animated content, I actually added it to the same part of the cart transition, we can scroll down this list and see. So, up here we see that the cart height is changing, the cut corner is changing. But then this is all part of animated content. So the built-in alpha is the thing that's fading in and fading out, which is what I said here. Yep. Or what I specified there. So it's all hooked up together. And then we can go the other way. So actually, yeah, so we don't have the design spec. We don't have it, but I can show you what the reverse looks like. And so it goes, whoa. Actually, wait, that is not, oh, actually, that's what we want, sorry. But that doesn't look right for some reason, and so I think we'll have to fix that. Yeah, that doesn't look right at all. Oh wait, collapsed to expanded is this way, and then if we go that way, Let's see. Rewind it. Oh. Oh. So it goes. Yeah. And that's not the transition that we do want. Because what we wanted is to actually kind of basically kind of do the exact reverse, which is like slide down and then slide out to the right. And so I'm glad we actually looked at that, because I think there's one thing that I did miss that is causing this issue. Battery is not charging. That's not good. Let's see. Yeah, so it's not, yeah, that animation does look wrong, even if it's a little janky. So how do we fix that? So I believe I had a cart. Yes, I did. So there's actually an X offset. And so here, right now, I'm not using the X offset, but I actually want to use it. Because what I really need to happen is I need it to kind of go left and right, and having full control over that is easier with an offset versus like using just the pure size. But I have to double check just to make sure I'm going to do this correctly. Yep, okay. Surface, box, yeah. So here I'm going to fill the max width, and then I'm going to use offset instead. Let's see. And actually, now I think about it, this stuff, is this the bottom sheet? Yeah, it is the bottom sheet. Color. Oh, I could actually use a surface now that I think about it. Surface. We're going to move all this code here. Because really, color should equal. It's just I think a better way to do it. Elevation equals 8 dp. Can remove the shadow now. This is the modifier parameter. And then I'm going to move that. We can delete all that stuff. Yep, there we go. Okay. Okay, so then we don't need this anymore. Still need the comma. And yeah, we're going to animate the shape like we did previously. Oh, that was wrong. Okay, so that looks a little better. And then this, oh wait, this should be indented. Yep. Okay. Okay, we'll rebuild the preview. This will take a bit of time. It's a little faster. All right, so start interactive mode. All right. Ooh, yeah. That's a little slow. Okay, there we go. Yeah. Okay, so that's looking better, but I'm going to slow it down just to double check that it's actually doing the right exit transition. Or I would say the expanded to collapsed transition, because I think that's what we didn't get right before. So if we go expanded to collapsed, let's see. Yeah. Yeah, so you can see that there's actually it's a subtle difference, but like when you slow it down, that's exactly what we want, which is it should kind of go in the exact reverse. So when it expands, it will kind of shoot out to the left and then grow upwards. But then when it collapses, it will kind of slide down and then go back out to the right. Um, the one thing though is it's actually kind of cut off like here. And so what I need to do is um, this, seems very hacky, but like for design intent, this I really want to be exact, and I could clean this up if I wanted to. But really, it is saying that for the X offset, so what we're really doing is like we're building the size of the bottom sheet to be the same height or kind of the same size as the screen, but we're making it hide off the screen. So it's kind of like if you had I guess let's see, you know, I guess one way to illustrate is like if I had a piece of paper like this, or if this was a frame, and this is really 360 by 640, just pretend it's an Android phone. The bottom sheet is this color here. And so what I am doing is like, I'm making this exactly the same size as the frame. But what I'm doing is saying like by default, it will be docked to the bottom right, kind of like so. Oh, nope, don't do that. And we'll make sure this clips content. Yeah, so it'll move like kind of like down here. So it's kind of off the screen, but that's what we want because the effect we want is it to grow like this and then go up. And then kind of go back down and go like this. So the reason I do that is because if I don't do that, I think sometimes the animation mid, like as it's transitioning, might look a little weird because like the rows here in the cart might, if the width of the container itself is growing and expanding, the rows may actually also look like they're growing and expanding, which is not the effect. I actually just want it to clip. And so I think there are other approaches to it that I can't think of, but like this is the approach I came up with, which I think works and can be improved, of course, but this at least makes sure that you get the right animation and things clip versus like scale up, which probably will look weird, like almost like an accordion. And so that's why I use X offset. And so with that, what it means is that when it is, if I go back to my code, is these are the specific animation tweaks for the X offset with different speeds. But if it is expanded, or sorry, if it is collapsed, so if it's expanded, then it goes all the way to 0, which means it moves it to the left, kind of like, the X is 0, so it goes like that. But then if it is collapsed, then I kind of offset it based on the width and then also based on how many items there are. So in this case, I'm saying there's always going to only be 3 items in the collapse cart. And then I kind of do this really hacky math just to kind of make it work. This is kind of like hard code some of the padding. Like I said, there's probably a better way to do this. But let's see. Yeah, and the offset is basically taking that max width minus the, the width of the collapse cart, which offsets it a little bit to the left. And if this all renders correctly, yeah, so, my math is not exact, but you can see here it's getting close. Yeah, so I'm probably missing some padding. Let's see, 24 plus 40, and then that plus one more. Oh. Actually, am I calculating this correctly? I think I'm not. Let's see, size plus 1. So there's 24 here. This is 40. plus 1, 2, 3 plus 16. Oh wait, how am I separating these? Let's see. Collapse cart is 8. Oh, okay. Oh. Oh wait, did I not put spacing between them? Oh no, I did. It's 24. Oh, okay. So then this is not 24. I think this is not 24. This is supposed to be 16. Yeah. Okay. Messed that up. Okay. It's always good to double check your work. 24, 8, 8, 16. Actually, so let's. Oh, okay. Getting there. All right, there we go. Yeah, so that looks much better. And so then if we, yep, beautiful. So I zoom out a bit. Yep, the padding looks correct. Awesome. Yep, there we go. And then if we do the reverse, expanded to collapsed. Yep, and then collapsed to expanded. Oh, interesting. The end state is slightly different. Oh no, it's the same. Okay, cool. Okay, so then the one thing we didn't do is what really is supposed to happen in the design spec is go back here when really there's two different events. So to collapse this, you don't click the whole container. You want to click this arrow here, and then the reverse is like here. You want to just click the whole container for the collapse cart. So I didn't do that. The way I hooked it up is you just click the entire expanded cart and then it goes down. And so let me just make that small tweak. So the collapse cart needs a tap event. So I will just make one solid on tap. And then you just do this. And then we can make a similar modifier here. And then the expanded cart will have a similar on tap event. But if you remember in the expanded cart, we have this arrow here. And so it's in the cart header. And so I'll kind of have to pass a bunch of events down, but this will be here. Oh, and really in this context, we call it on collapse because that's what we're going to do. And I had this on click event before, but never used it for the icon button. And so now I can just say on collapse. And then if we go up to where the cart header is being used, it's being used in the expanded cart cart header here. And so you can use the trailing lambda syntax if you want, like so. And so what it means is like when that collapse button is clicked, then OnTap will fire off. And so both of these will fire off, but then what we need to do is handle it in the actual bottom sheet where all these things are hosted. So, oh, yeah, so towards the bottom. So here, the expanded cart has a on tap event. So it's, on tap equals expanded equals false because we're going to collapse it. Oh, var. Where is my thing? Oh, yes, that's what we're doing. Yeah, so expanded is managed here. So really, the cart bottom sheet needs an event called onExpand. So onExpand equals, it's this. It's actually this event here. So expanded equals IT. Okay, so we can remove that. We can add a parameter to bottom sheet. Come on. Wow. Whoa, don't know what happened. Oh, okay, it did add it. That was weird. Yeah, it can be a trailing lambda as well. So we can go like this, and then say expanded equals t. Okay. So onExpand, and what we'll do is really, we'll fire the onExpanded and say, you know, this is false because we're really collapsing it. And then for collapse cart, we are on tap equals true. Okay. All right, so then refresh. And then I think what we'll also do is, okay. Right, so we'll enter an active preview. So then we click this, it expands. And so now when I click anywhere here, it doesn't actually do anything. I have to click this. Yep, and now it works as expected. You know, there's some little cleanup you can do. Like here, it's showing the clickable, like the ripple on the cart. You know, there's ways you can clean that up, but for the sake of this stream, you kind of get the point. Here, at least it works nicely because this is an icon button. But there we go. So, okay, so then the last thing we'll do is this is broken right now, but if you go back to the video, here when you, oh wait, that's not the one. When you open the backdrop, the cart actually hides and shows. It kind of goes off to the right and then to the left. So that's a little thing we can build that actually hooks up to the backdrop. And that's the hidden state that I had actually was referencing before. So we need to, let's just make sure yep. So we need to pass a value that says it's hidden. You know, is bottom sheet hidden? And so there's going to be a value for that. So hidden. It's also Boolean. Because false. It's not hidden by default. And the only thing we're going to do for hidden is change the X offset. And so what we still need to account for it here in our transition state. So, you know, we're going to say if hidden's true, then the state's hidden. Delete that. And so with the X offset, this covers all the tweening between the expand and collapse, but then this is the transition that's going to end up being used when it's transitioning to hidden. And then the X offset is hidden, so I'm making it max width because if you remember from my Figma drawing, if it's hidden, we want it to go all the way to the right. And so it's just going to basically take the X and just move it like this. So it's just going to kind of go back and forth like so. And so that is all hooked up. And then, so hidden is just being passed because the hidden event is not really controlled by the expanding bottom sheet. It's actually going to be controlled by the backdrop. But to prototype it, I will show you, if we go back to our, collapse that. If we go back to our collapsed cart preview, and actually I'm just gonna, you can totally rename this now because what we really have is an cart expanding bottom sheet preview. And so there, you know, I'll put it here just as another variable that needs to be accounted for, hidden. So we're going to pass hidden down like so. And we, you know, I think just for fun, we're going to add a button randomly in this layout just so you can kind of see what it does. So, you know, on click, we're just going to toggle hidden back and forth. Hidden. And then this, you can say hide show cart. Okay, so we'll rebuild. And while that's happening, oh, never mind. All right, so now when we prototype it, is it ready? Oh, nope, it broke again. Okay, so if I click this, it goes off to the left, or sorry, at the right, and then it comes back. And then if I click the whole thing, it, you know, shoots out and comes back. So we have all the animation states kind of wired up, which is great. But now I will wire it up to the backdrop just to complete the entire example. But the backdrop and the cart are separate components. So really we should be doing this in something like the app itself. So right now the app only shows the backdrop if you actually were to deploy this app to device. And so I have an app preview here, which probably only just shows the expanded cart, but I'm going to basically recreate the same preview that I had here because this is what we're going to end up using. So one sec. So we don't need this button anymore. And we can move this state up. It's going to complain because it needs an experimental annotation. Oh wait, that's not. Oh yeah, that's good enough actually. Okay. And then I need the backdrop. And what does the backdrop need? The backdrop. Oh, there's, oh, right. So the backdrop, I do need to hook up the state now. So, you know, the backdrop was, you know, before we hooked it up where it's revealing and concealing, but we weren't passing that event to the higher level part of the app. So we can actually, we can still do that. So here, we have backdrop revealed, and so I can add event just called onReveal, Boolean, unit, and then by default it's nothing. And so onReveal, so I already have a backdrop reveal, but I can do it here. onReveal, pass IT. Yeah, And so when we go back to backdrop, backdrop has this trailing lambda, which is now hidden equals IT. Let's see. Yep. Okay. And let's see if this works. We will use this app preview. Expanded as false, and so we have to rebuild this because really it should not look like that. That's the old preview. All right, so now we actually have this fuller example. So let's open up the interactive preview. So if I open the backdrop, click, come on. Yep, there we go. And then if I reveal the backdrop, so you can kind of see it goes in and out on the bottom. And then if I tap this, it goes all over everything. And if I tap it down, it goes like that. Yeah. And so now we actually have the cart and the expanded bottom sheet. The backdrop and the expanded bottom sheet all integrated together, which is awesome. So, yep. And so we'll stop that. You can deploy to device to see the really smooth transition if you want. I won't attempt to do that today, but that's how you hook up the two things. And so I think if we recap, we'll go back. Episode 4. Oh, we did forget the animated checkout button. We're not done yet, but I think I ran out of time, so I'll save that for later. It'll just be, it's already in the code, but the thing to know is that this button is actually on a different layer. And so the trick is that you have to kind of make it, you see how it animates not with the list, it's kind of on top of the list. Yeah. And so that's what you just have to take consideration. And so we'll cover that in our next stream. All right, so that concludes the 4th episode. We ran out of time to implement some small details, but we can cover that shortly in the next one. Hopefully you'll walk away with an even greater understanding of how animation works in Compose, and will be inspired to experiment on your own. Be sure to look in the description for the link to GitHub repo, which includes the completed code from today's stream, as well as helpful links to learn more about Jetpack Compose and material design. And if you found this video useful, let us know in the comments, as we're looking forward to continuing doing these kinds of streams. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.